Welcome to the Level Up Leader podcast, where we dive into the minds of high-performing leaders who are navigating disruption, building legacy, and leveling up one step at a time. I'm your host, Michael King, executive coach to top-performing leaders, helping them break world records. Now, today's guest brings more than 3 decades of experience leading through transformation in one of the most disrupted industries in the world. Ava Thomas is the president of the Lincoln Journal-Star and leads Midwest Media Group for Lee Enterprises, overseeing operations in Nebraska and Iowa. Now, Ava's story is one of resilience, reinvention, and real leadership. From classified ads to the C-suite, she's seen it all while balancing motherhood, embracing disruption, and building initiatives like Inspire, Women's Leadership Initiative, which is actually changing lives across the region. Now, in this episode, we talk about navigating legacy brands in a digital-first world, why results always matter, but the power of being authentic, honest, and human in your leadership style. So get ready for a masterclass in humility, high-impact leadership. So let's dive in. Awesome. Welcome to the Level Up Leader podcast, Ava Thomas. So excited to finally get to connect with you on this platform.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, our paths have crossed a little bit within the community. I've been a part of some of the things that we'll actually work with some leaders that we're connected with, but also too with the Inspire Awards. But before we kind of dive into all of that, give us a little bit of the backstory of who is Ava Thomas? How did you get to where you got to? What are some things that you're passionate about?
Awesome. Thank you. Who is Ava Thomas? So in terms of title, I am the Midwest president for Lee Enterprises. Midwest is Nebraska and Iowa for us. We have a ton of properties throughout Nebraska and into Iowa. This is year 30. So in February, I celebrated 30 years with the company. I was attending UNK and decided to transfer to UNL, which is what brought me to the Lincoln Journal-Star back in 1995, if you can believe that. Seems like a million years ago some days and like 3 weeks ago some days. But at the time, the Lincoln Journal-Star was really close to campus, provided me with free parking, which as a single mom was very attractive, and started in classified ads, couches for sale, lost dogs, and just kind of worked my way up from there.
That's incredible. So what has your journey been like over the last couple decades, working with the organization?
Well, things have changed a little bit. So I mentioned that I started in classified ads. So this was before Craigslist, right? So I think since the day I walked in, we've been being disrupted. So my first day, we had about, I want to say 12 calls on hold in classified. And, I'd answer the phone with a headset similar to this, Journal-Star Classifieds, this is Ava. And then they would start rattling like, I got to place an ad in the classifieds. So we were really busy at the time. And then, Craigslist happened and LinkedIn happened and Pinterest happened. And so it's been a journey of constant disruption in the business that we're in. So a lot of changes throughout the years and constantly reinventing and evolving for 3 decades now. Keeps you on your toes.
No kidding. That is incredible. So when you dove in, I mean, obviously, being with an organization as long as you have been, and you've been kind of a pillar in the Lincoln community specifically, and also impacting Omaha. How did you know that this is the place that you wanted to land for a season?
I actually did. That's what's so crazy about it is, I thought I was a pre-law student. I thought I would go on to law school and I'd be an attorney. And it's probably the only other thing that when people ask today, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? It's like, oh, I'd be a lawyer. No doubt about it. Ask my family. I like to argue. But, at some point when I started at the Journal-Star, my son was a week old. So, I had my interview the afternoon after I got out of the hospital from having my son. And, like I said, was going to college, had my daughter who was 5 years old at the time, and he had some health issues. And so, law school wasn't in the cards for me. And as I said, I was in classifieds at the time. So classified advertising, which is, people today probably don't even know what that is, want ads. And I stuck around and got into the sales division and eventually just started, it seemed like every couple of years, I'd get tapped for a promotion. You say, you're pillar in the community and we've crossed paths, but for so many of those years I was just head down and working, and the next job would come along and someone would tap me like, you're really good at this, you should try this. And
Mm.
eventually found myself in managing a very small team. We launched the online advertising division, which very well, that side of the business, and then it just sort of grew from there. I never saw myself working at the Lincoln Journal-Star and then obviously beyond that, or leading the organization, but it worked out that way. So that's just how things happen sometimes.
Now you've went from places of being somebody that like, as you said, maybe a little bit more of an employee mindset, showing up on a day-to-day basis, head down, but also now you've transitioned into feeling like you're making a pretty big impact and you have some really meaningful relationships within the community. Was there a specific moment that you recognized that maybe your influence lift was a little bit bigger than what you had anticipated?
Yeah. So I think when I was named general manager at the Lincoln Journal-Star, which is, here in Lincoln, I've been extremely fortunate to be able to live and work and play in this community and do a bigger and broader job from Lincoln, with some travel, obviously, with the region that I have. But when I became general manager, that's sort of publisher in training, and publisher is an outdated title, gets confused with editor quite often. The publisher of the quote unquote newspaper, which is our sort of legacy brand, is running the operation. It's essentially the president of the operation, the CEO of the operation. And so as general manager, sort of the publisher in training role. And so I think that was when it became clear to me that, okay, this is something that I think I'm pretty good at and I really enjoy. I never saw for myself, but I actually really want. So I had never, up to that point, thrown my name in the hat, if you will, right, for a position. I'd been tapped for them like
Mm-hmm.
every, 2-3 years. Once I figured like I mastered this job, it was done. I'm like, well, I'm just getting this one. I'm going to go do this other one. But I think when I became general manager, and I think that was 2012, it became clear this next step is the top of the organization as president and publisher. And I really wanted it. And that was the first time I actually threw my name in the hat for the role and pursued it. So, yeah. And then that sort of required me to be more public facing, right? So, have a seat at the table and rub elbows with the other presidents and CEOs throughout the city and throughout the community, and be more involved. I'm a worker. I love that aspect of it. And so, um, creating that time and intentionality around that was necessary from that point on.
Incredible. What did that feel like when you first kind of started to embrace the reality that this was something that you wanted to do?
Quite honestly, uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because you're putting yourself out there, right? So it was really uncomfortable at first. I'm introverted. If you
Mm-hmm.
see me out at functions or public speaking or something, that would be maybe a little bit hard to believe. But I'm very introverted, and I get my energy from being alone, and I need that downtime. And so it was uncomfortable, and it takes
Wow.
practice, a lot of
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah, that's something that you and I have in common. I tell my family and my team all the time, like, I'm an introvert that plays an extrovert on TV.
Yes.
Like this type of stuff this is an ends to a means. Like this is required. This is not necessarily something that gives a lot of energy, right?
Yes, go on vacation with me. Some of my best friends, I spent, 9 days with a group of folks in January, and we're on a catamaran. And so you're in a, like, basically like an RV on the water. And there's a newer couple that I haven't been around a ton. And so, everybody goes up in the morning and everyone has breakfast and you're together all the time, which is, for me, um not a good vacation for me. So we had to have the conversation before. I'm like, she'll stay in her cabin. She'll have to go to her cabin for periods of time. She's not upset. She just has to recharge. And so don't take it personally. So yeah, I love that you can identify with that.
Oh, 100%. Like it's something where it's like I have to have specific downtime actually scheduled into my daily cadence. Otherwise, I
Yes.
don't necessarily know like how I feel. I feel a little bit off, and those recharge moments are so important, right?
That really came in, we were talking earlier about COVID in 2020 for me. I was alone for the first time in my life. So I was a teen mom. And prior to that, just circumstances of my childhood where I was constantly with or taking care of somebody and my whole life. So in 2020, I'm an empty nester. My husband and I at the time had separated. I was alone for the first time in my life, and it's COVID. So you can't go anywhere. You're not really traveling or do anything, going anywhere to distract you. Work was, people were sent home, which I'm not a work from home type of gal. Um, but it was just the quietness and the stillness of that period of time was actually something that I really needed, and now have grown to appreciate so much. That was also uncomfortable, really uncomfortable at first, and now I, can't even imagine not, as you said, just being able to have that time in my day where it's quiet and it's still and there's no distractions and there's, just being.
Yeah. So and that's really interesting. You said that too. So COVID for the good and for the bad, but one of those things that kind of came out of it, it kind of helped you kind of reconnect or maybe even get a little bit more clarity as far as like who you were as a person and how you operate best. Would that be fair?
That's very fair. I moved out of the home that I was living in June of 2020. So had been there for, myself for, gosh, over a year at that point, and moved into a smaller place, and I didn't get a television connected. So, I had TV in the house, but I just didn't get any services, and thought I don't really have time for TV. I was accepted into the Stay in Leadership Academy, so I was really diving into a social change leadership course that I was taking. I was leading the mayor's task force for economic recovery post COVID, and it was just maybe the most transformational point in my life. And as an adult, it was a real gift, a real gift.
Oh, that's powerful. So how have you taken what you experienced and what you discovered in that season, and how's that affected you today as a leader?
I think, one of the most important lessons, and, if I look back at, sort of who I was before that and who am after that as a leader in particular. Prior to that, I felt like I have to know the answer, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to make it up, and I have to present in a way that wasn't always authentic, if I'm being
Mm.
honest. Um, Perfect and polished and without flaw. And I think after going through, just it wasn't just the social change leadership course, or, COVID did this, or this time alone, or therapy. I think it was just a combination of many things. It was all of it together led me to this place where I could be much more authentic in my relationships with others, and certainly with my team, in my leadership practices, is just, being a human being, like not Ava, the president of the organization and the
Right.
leader of all of us, but just like Ava as a human, right? Like nobody cares about your title. Nobody cares about all that. And you're presenting as this, you know, everything's perfectly perfect, and it's not. And so being candid about my past and about adversity and the mistakes that I've made and still make, today, every day, and that I'm learning and evolving and trying, and I'm on a quest for, self-discovery and trying to be better. And so I think that, yeah, it was a huge, huge shift for me, and just being real. Yeah, just being
Yeah.
real.
And thanks for being transparent with that. I mean, I think the seasons of adversity and even just the seasons of disruption. And so now it's like there's this massive storm that you're kind of navigating through with COVID, and also I imagine some industry disruptions as well that have been
Just a
like
few.
almost nonstop within the media space. So within that, like, when we talk about disruption, when we talk about adversity, what does that mean to you today? Like, what are some things you're facing?
Oh gosh. The challenge is that we are evolving, and the challenge is that we are what most people recognize as a legacy business. So, when folks, say, what do you do? Like you get this all the time, right? It's like the number one icebreaker question. So, Ava, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
If you say that you work for the Lincoln Journal Star, the Omaha World Herald, or Lee Enterprises is a quote unquote newspaper company, I mean, people view that as your product, which is one product in so many products and services that we offer, as the legacy business that you have, which is actually a small portion of what our business is now. And so the evolution and the transformation, we maybe haven't been all that loud and proud about it because we tell the stories of our clients and our advertisers and maybe don't tell ours as well. But it's really centered around the need to deliver today on your legacy product that people still know and love and desire, and also build for tomorrow. And the juxtaposition of that is the real challenge. And it's also reskilling teams and training teams that, many have been here. Some have been here as long as I've been here and
Mm-hmm.
have embraced change. And for some, it's much harder to let go of what you know. And so, yeah, that's the big challenge today.
Wow. So how do you show up every day with something fresh, with that disruption that disruption's not going to go away anytime soon?
Oh yeah, no, we're in it for the long haul. But I think all businesses are. I
Yeah.
don't meet with I can't think of a single business that I've met with, and yours probably included, that isn't impacted by disruption, consumer technology. I just sent this morning. This is a great one. I sent my team a note, and 2 weeks ago, I was able to tour get a little sneak peek of the Google data center in Lincoln.
Yeah.
And sorry, Google, but it's not super exciting. It's a bunch of processors. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what a data center is, right? It's just looks like a bunch of hard drives to me, like hundreds and hundreds of square feet of hard drives. So, but we had a meeting out there and we were able to tour it, and there was a banner on the wall, and the banner said, "Excellence takes effort." Like all capital letters, excellence takes effort. And I just took a picture of the banner, and I do this sometimes, I see stuff and want to remember and just throw it into a little folder. But I was just thinking about that. If you worked long enough with me, I have this 1 to 10 scale that I ask people about. 1's terrible, 10's terrific, or 1's very low, 10's very high, right? What's your level of effort? Like what are you giving? Right? Because I'm trying to bring
I love that.
a 10 every day. I'm trying to give a 10 every single day. I was off last week, so I probably wasn't giving a 10 work-wise all week. I worked a couple days, but had my granddaughters for the week. So in terms of work, I was probably a 7. But generally, when I walk in this door, I aim to give level 10. And if you ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm likely a 12, right? And that's,
Yeah, let's go.
but if you've worked with me long enough, I've asked you that question, and many times I've gotten 6.5, 7, 7.5 to 8, very rarely. And this is, I think, speaks to the level of the relationship that I have with my team, is that they're honest about it. Number
Yeah.
one, that they're not giving level 10, but you always know
Yeah, exactly.
whether you're giving your level 10 effort. And so, I sent that picture that I took on my phone a couple weeks ago and just said, Google, like one of the world's most powerful media companies, like $3 trillion company, started by a couple college kids in a dorm at Stanford in 1996. They have a sign on their wall that says excellence takes effort. Like, it's true. And so, like, what are you going to do this week to be a level 10?
So when you ask that question of your team, so what's the effort you're bringing to the table? And they tell you a 6.5 or a 7, which, by the way, you already knew that before they even walked into your office, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be asking the question.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked the question. That's so interesting, Michael. I don't think I've ever asked that question to somebody that I knew was giving level 10.
Why?
Because I know, and I think they know, and I'm not trying to get them to reflect on it. I don't know. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So
You know what I asked that, let me just, I'm
Yeah.
going to pull that thread one more time. You know what I asked the level 10s? I asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of satisfaction with your job?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And then the follow-up question, which is, 7 or 8, or, is what would it take for you to say 10? Because I don't want to lose the level 10s. Like, I don't want to lose my A players. I don't want to lose those that are not, mired in mediocrity. I want to retain them. So the question I'm asking them is a different question, which is, yeah, how much do you love your job on a scale? What's your level of job satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10? And what do I have to do to get that to a 10?
Powerful. So yeah, so you're taking some time, you're recognizing that there might be a gap, and like, let's identify what it takes to fill the gap and do that.
And sometimes people won't tell you that. Sometimes I read on an exit interview once, I'll never forget this. I read somebody that was really talented, member of our team, had resigned and said she had asked her supervisor to fix the light on her desk, right? It just turns on, it was flickering. And she had asked several times apparently, and it never got done. And it was a signal to her that that she didn't matter, apparently. And so I read it on the exit interview, which is after somebody's gone. And from that point on, I constantly would say, like, don't let me read something on your exit interview that you could have told me and I could have fixed, which is also the question of, your job satisfaction, like what would get that to a 10? Now, I don't want to find out about it after the fact. I want to know today so that we can address it now.
Powerful. Yeah. So in our coaching programs, we have these weekly cadence questions that we have our leaders have their direct reports fill out. So typically, like, somebody like you might have like maybe 7 or 8 people that would fill out almost like a 360 review, but on a weekly basis.
Sure.
But not like big heavy lift questions, but it's like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you feel like you're engaging with your direct report this week? Identify the gap. What can we do better on that? Finding that the cadence really, because especially in 2025, when autonomy and speed are the 2 things that are highest levels of currency.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then effort being really, really close to those things. But you want to find out, like, okay, great. Let's find out the people who are absolutely stoked to be here, and let's keep them really excited and keep them engaged. Right.
Yes. Yes.
So powerful. So you mentioned this sign about Google, and so I was in an executive team meeting with a Fortune 500 company. This is in New York a couple of years ago, right? And I was in their boardroom, and this boardroom was like, it looked like it was like some sort of tech center from NASA. I mean, this thing was like gemmed out, glass walls. But the etching, how like you can do like those glass etching, like stickers that look like it's embossed into the window type of thing. They went all the way around this executive suite. They went and they put their core values as far as who they are as a company. And so it was like, excellence, diversity, equality. Like they went around like they had all their big pillars that they wanted to stand on. But then right at the very head of the room was this frame. And and I'm going to mess up the quote, but I'm going to tell you what it basically translated into, because it was worded a little bit fancier. But this quote, it cracked me up because I was coaching the CEO. But the quote said this: "This is not my job is something we never say." And then it had his name kind of like with a little scribble signature line. And so for me, like, I recognized like that wasn't something that came out of like some sort of board meeting that people voted on. That was like a direct quote value. that CEO wanted to make sure that every single person that walked into that room, they understood that that was a key operational value. Like,
Interesting.
now, because I knew him, I knew probably what had happened. That was more reactionary, probably versus actual. That was more aspirational than it was actual. Because probably what happened was he probably was walking in from the parking garage in New York City, and he probably recognized that maybe like there was some trash by the door, and so he talked to Jim, who was standing by the door on his way in, and so he asked Jim, and Jim probably's response to him was, that's really below my pay grade. That's not my gig. And so the next meeting that they have, guess what type of framed imprint that they have in that boardroom meeting? It's this big quote, from him saying, "This is not my job. It's not something we'll do." But it reminds me, though, just like that Google thing is like, there are centric messages that we want every single person who encounters our organizations to really get, to really feel.
Yes.
What is your statement?
Gosh, you telling that story made me think of a story that isn't really related to that. And I don't know if it's like Jim, heard that. It's action, right? So there's a piece of popcorn on the floor that you dropped and you keep walking, tells me you think that's not important. There's not anything that I'm not willing to do, right? And I hope, I believe my team knows that. But I think about, gosh, so I was talking about being a publisher and president CEO of the organization, and we've got a couple of revenue streams, right? It's subscriptions and it's advertising, and advertising is the biggest driver of our success. Certainly both are important and we need both, but we've really have to have revenue diversification on the advertising side as well as growth, right? So in sales, I'm going to ask you a question. Can I flip the script on you?
Go, let's do it.
Okay, in sales, do you believe you have it or you don't? Like, can sales be taught?
Oh man, that's interesting. Now, I mean, I coach a lot of sales teams, and
I know. That's why I'm curious.
so now, with in all fairness, we have data and metrics and assessments to be able to find out, like I know how to guide you into like the 80 percentile of somebody who is more than capable of being a phenomenal sales based off of the assessment data that we give. So we minimize the risk of hiring. And so a lot of times, like people that are even current clients or even past clients, it's totally normal for people to say, "Hey, here's the data set we have on these folks. Can you tell us whether or not they're going to perform well in this role?" And we can guide them to like what we call the 80th percentile. But I tell you what, there is that additional 20% that is something that is so innate within a person that I don't know if it can be taught. I think it's something that is just who they are.
I so agree with that. So, the little etching maybe would be results matter, and they always matter. And I think there was a point in time, and this has been many, many years ago. This has been over probably 20 years ago now. And I hired this young man, really promising, super talented, engaging young man, bright, clearly intelligent. I really believe if you hire generally high intelligence folks, you're going to get a good outcome. Sports background, which we've had, significant success when you have sports background. You have sort of that individuality, but you also have team mentality. I mean, he on paper was so good. I mean, looked so good. Got along well with everybody, super positive team member. And I'm pouring into him, coaching, mentoring, training. He's putting time and effort in, and it just was not coming together. Just sales were not happening, goals, not attaining goals. I even adjusted expectations. And I remember thinking, like, if I part ways with this young man, the team's going to be devastated. And it will be impactful to the team because he is so well liked and he is working so hard. He wanted to get it. He was making the required number of calls. Activity doesn't always get results, right? And so waited far too long, drug it out longer than it needed to be, and eventually had the conversation. We parted ways, and I will never forget what he said to me. I'll never forget it. He said, Ava, my dad taught me if I work hard, I will be successful. And I worked really hard here. And he's, chin's quivering, voice is wavering.
Oh,
And I, I just remember that feeling. It was like, I knew I worked really hard too. I worked really hard because I wanted him to be successful. He was working really hard, and it just the results weren't there. And at the end of the day, results drive the business. And so, if you're doing something that you're working really hard at and it's not producing results, there comes a point in time where you have to say, this isn't a good fit. And I think initially that was really hard on the team, but they also was such a valuable lesson to me and to them that we're here for one reason. We're here to do a job and we're here to results. And, it's about driving the business. And so we have to have the if you're shooting a lot of baskets and they aren't going in,
wow.
you probably don't have a spot on the team. And so results matter always. And I ask this question to this day. If you have an interview with me for a role here, you're probably going to get this question, just like on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of effort? And that is, in sales, do you believe if you work hard, you'll be successful? Because people need to know coming into this job, it's not just about working hard. It's hard work doesn't always beget success in sales in particular. And we are focused on results.
Man, let's come back to that for just a second here in a moment. But I want to just tell you something. This is that working with, and I want to give you some props on this, because working with executives in like really, really hard places, and also in some really big celebrational spaces, the difference between leaders that actually make the grade, that make that elevate, go to the next level, versus those that end up either tapping out or failing, it really comes down to two things. Number one, high levels of empathy, and number two, the ability to make the call. And that story that you just gave me right there, I'm going to probably end up sharing this with a bunch of people, because what you just, I love the fact that you exercised your ability to be empathetic. Like, you got it. Like, you were emotionally connected to the moment. You saw it. You felt the pain of being invested, but you had to make the call, and you had the guts to do it. So many times leaders get in situations where they just go, man, I think I'm just going to live in this land of malaise for a season.
Yes.
Are you tracking with me?
Yes.
Like, sometimes leaders sit in that spot knowing that they should have made a call for years, maybe even decades.
Yes.
And they just won't do it because of something's holding them back from actually making the call. So
right.
It's impressive. So good on you.
Yeah. Fear of the unknown.
Wow. But in this, so what you're talking about though, so it's like, okay, you ask the question, if you believe that you work hard, do you believe that you'll be successful? And it's kind of curious. And now I would love to know, like, what do you think when people say yes to that question? Because now understanding the backstory about that, and you ask me that question, I'm going to probably spin that, because knowing your backstory on that. But here's the thing is, like, so you've probably heard this statement before, but the only thing that people ever remember about you is the way that you make them feel. So we have sales reps from across all different organizations. And if there's one key metric that I love to measure, does a sales rep have the ability to make the potential client feel like they're a part of the story?
Right. And I think in the world of AI, that's even more important. It's even
so important.
So much. It's so critically important. What you do to differentiate yourself and what you do to stand out and how you make them feel and your ability to connect with them, if they're all business or if they're, want to talk about their kids, equestrian race. That is so vital and has never been more important, which is crazy to think about in the world of AI.
Man, well, that like leads to a bunch of different questions. And so I want to make sure we have time for that. But
yes.
But just, okay, so I'm going to give you like two more questions here, and then we'll land the plane on this. But within that, so AI has disrupted everything. So So in fact, it's been identified. So three big identifiers over the last 5 or 6 years that have been massive disruptions. So the first one would be kind of like what we call the Black Lives Matter effect.
Yes.
Right. The other one would be COVID. And then the third one would be the inception or the adoption of generative AI into basic mainstream practices. Right. So how has this impacted you?
One of the things they said, which I shared with my team this morning at the Google data center sneak peek, was in the next 2 years. So they have data centers all over the world, countries, and, we're lucky in Nebraska to have one in Lincoln. There's one in, I think maybe the biggest one's in Council Bluffs, but, they're all over the world. And so one of the things they said is in the next 2 years, Google will process more data than they have in the previous 27 years since their history in the next 2 years because of AI and the world's insatiable demand for information. And you think of us as the newspaper, but our ad agency is a $100 million agency annually. And we have an entire suite of AI tools for businesses, small, all the way up to, 7-figure clients that we have. And so, but those tools only really matter if we are giving the effort to connect them to our clients. So constantly making that connection for our team is, that's my job. That's my job.
That's so important. It has never been more important for you to be a human today than ever.
Agree.
Wow. So good. So good. So talk to us a little bit about just the Inspire initiatives that you've been championing and all that stuff.
Oh, yay. That's my favorite topic. Good. I was hoping we'd get to this. Yeah. So the Inspire Celebrating Women's Leadership Initiative turned 10 years old last year. It was founded in 2015 by me and an amazing group of a talented team at the time. Natalia Witta, she was on the team at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so together we brought that to life. And so it's just been phenomenal. It's been the best 10-year run. But we just continue to get bigger and better every year and launch in new markets. So we're coming up on year 11 this fall, September 24th in Lincoln, year 4 in Omaha this year. We just wrapped in Grand Island, Nebraska in April. They're going to be having an event in the fall in Kearney, Nebraska. And, I just got asked this question last week, how did Inspire come to be? And it was sitting in a Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors meeting in 2015. Freezing cold, I think it was January. I was looking around the room and there were so many talented women leading both hospitals in the city, the largest assisted living facility in the city, the bank, the biggest locally owned bank. The Chamber of Commerce was run by a female. The Community Foundation was run by female. I was running the Lincoln Journal-Star. And I thought, this is wild that we have this powerful women's leadership cohort, and we should do something to celebrate it. And so brought it back to the team, wanted to do it in March. Like I said, it was January. They were like, yeah, no, which I think is such a strong testament to the team that, when a leader comes to you with an idea, it's just sort of, when a leader, right? Again, I hate to drop titles, but I think you've got to do it. But kudos to them for saying, like, that's great that March is International Women's Business Month. We can't do it right in 60 days. So let's do it right and do it later. You said fast is important. And I couldn't agree more. Like, fast is more important than maybe anything these days, but to do it right, balanced against the backdrop of okay, we see your vision, and to do it right, it will take more time than to be able to do it in March. So we launched it in September, and we've been doing it every September since. And, now we have the Inspire Girls program, and, it just continues to build. That this just momentum just keeps building, and I'm just tremendously proud of it.
See, that's what's exciting, is that every now and then you get these vision type of things, you get some opportunities as a leader that are kind of setting up some legacy moments for you. And that's happening when the decisions that you're making, that there's some sort of compound effect. There's something that's exponentially propelling your message and propelling the passion behind the vision at a rate that you almost feels like has a life of its own. It kind of carries itself, right?
Well, I think the world today is sort of self-centered, honestly. We're all in our own, world, I mean, you're doing things constantly moving, and it's just the pace, and so just to like think about for a moment someone taking the time to Inspire's built on nominations, and the nominations come from the public. So somebody has to take the time to log on to our site and fill out a form that says, this woman inspires me. And here's how and why she inspires me and inspires others. And we get hundreds of those, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Like if I showed you the book, it's really, really thick. And so like think about getting a notification that you inspired someone so much that they took the time to fill out this form. And then, by the time you're walking across the stage to give acceptance remarks in any category, healthcare, education, philanthropy, name the category, there have been hundreds of women who have had a nomination written. And, so if you've been in the room that day, and I know you have been, it's the best, it's just a feel good. You feel like you could run through a brick wall after that day, because it is, pardon the pun, but it is really inspiring.
It's incredible.
It's that feeling, like, can you make somebody feel this way? And that's what it's designed to do. So.
Well, you're nailing it. So thanks for taking time to be on this podcast. And do you have one final closing thought, like some way to wrap this whole thing up for us today?
You know what? So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, so with the events coming up this fall, Lincoln in September, Omaha in October, you can fill out a nomination at inspirelincoln.com for an inspiring woman in Lincoln, at inspire-omaha.com for an inspiring woman in Omaha. And even if you don't take the time to fill out a nomination, or you're not in Lincoln or Omaha, I have these little note cards, and you don't have to have note cards, but I'm going to show them. They say, "You inspire me" at the top.
I love it.
And
love it.
Again, I think we're wrapped up in our own little world, and email has become the form of communication and text. Take a moment and think about who inspires you. And it doesn't have to be a female, man, woman, child, whatever. And just drop them a note and tell them how they've inspired you. I promise it'll make their day.
That was Ava Thomas, a true level up leader who reminds us that excellence takes effort, and that leadership is just as much about authenticity as it is about ambition. Now, if there's one takeaway from today's episode, it's this: show up every day with a level 10 effort. Whether you're leading a team, launching a vision, or navigating disruption, you get to decide how much of yourself that you bring to the table. Effort matters, results matter, but showing up with empathy and the courage to make the call, that's what real leadership is made of. Now, if this episode inspired you, help us keep bringing on top-tier leaders like Ava. Like this episode, subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on your favorite platform. And if you're in Nebraska, don't miss the upcoming Inspire Women's Leadership events in Lincoln, Omaha. Please nominate someone or just attend and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Level Up Leader podcast. I'm your host, Michael King. And until next time, stay focused, stay human, and keep leveling up.